She thought it was just a junk lot behind an old racetrack. But underneath a rusted trapdoor was a bunker, sealed shut since 2007, and inside, a perfectly preserved fleet of supercars that hadn't seen daylight in over a decade. What started as a $1,000 land grab turned into the discovery of a missing billionaire's secret, and the key was still in the ignition of one red car that no one was supposed to touch. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. And if stories like this spark your imagination, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode might just outdo this one. It started with a bad real estate listing and a worse hangover. Just a grainy photo of a cracked lot behind the old racetrack, a steel hatch half buried under gravel, and a 4-word description: zoned industrial, sold as is. Lacey had been flipping busted cars for years, but lately she'd been thinking about expanding. She was 28, exhausted, and still living above her dad's old garage, the one with more oil stains than working tools. So when she saw the listing for Lot 17, she didn't hesitate. It was cheap, only $1,000, and something about it felt wrong in the way that made her want to fix it. Not cars this time, something bigger. The lot was barely a quarter acre, fenced in with rusted chain link and surrounded by wind-swept silence. No buildings, no signs, just weeds, gravel, and that strange trap door set into the concrete like a scar. She parked her truck and walked the perimeter. It felt still, like the kind of stillness you get in churches and morgues. She walked to the hatch, crouched, and brushed away the dirt. The metal was thick and matte gray, with an old-fashioned keyhole. No handle, no label. Just a small brass plate with a name etched into it: R.C. Voss. She ran her fingers over the letters, then stood and looked around again. No cameras, no wires, no alarms. But her instincts were screaming. She returned the next day with a crowbar, a sledgehammer, and enough adrenaline to knock the door off its hinges. But no matter how she hit it, the hatch didn't budge. It was like trying to move a vault door with your bare hands. Frustrated, she stepped back and studied it again, then noticed something odd. 3 small notches around the keyhole, worn down like they'd been pressed repeatedly by something thin and mechanical. That night, she drove 3 towns over to visit Hal, an old friend of her dad's who used to crack safes for the railroad. He whistled low when he saw the photo. That's military grade. Not for storage, for secrets. He handed her an old bypass tool, a graphite key blank, and one piece of advice. If it opens, be ready. People don't lock away junk like that. It took 3 hours in the rain, lying belly down on wet concrete, trying every angle with the blank. But then click. Not loud, not cinematic. Just a soft, metallic sigh, like something exhaling after years underwater. The hatch shifted. She stood up and stared as the door lifted itself just half an inch. No light, no air movement. Just that perfect, terrifying invitation. She drove home in silence that night, soaked and shaking. Whatever was beneath Lot 17 hadn't been touched in years, but tomorrow, it would be, and her life would never be the same again. She came back at dawn, coffee in one hand, flashlight in the other, and a wrench tucked into her belt loop like a security blanket. The sun hadn't broken the horizon yet, but Lot 17 looked different. Not better, just heavier, like the ground was holding its breath. Lacey knelt beside the hatch again, fingers trembling slightly as she slid them under the raised edge and gave a gentle pull. It groaned open with a sound like bones shifting under dirt. The air that spilled out was cold. Not musty, not rotten, cold like air conditioning, like something man-made had been pumping through for decades. That alone made her pause. Below was a metal staircase, narrow, rusted, slick with condensation. She aimed the flashlight down. 30, maybe 40 steps, ending in a heavy blast door with a circular wheel lock at the center. And beside it, a panel, digital, still blinking green. Power was running. She swallowed. She stepped slowly, each boot echoing against the stairs. The lower she went, the less she heard. No insects, no birds, no wind, only the hum of hidden wiring. When she reached the blast door, she pressed her palm against the wheel, expecting resistance. But the lock turned easily, like it had been waiting. The door swung open, and what she saw made her stop breathing. A tunnel stretched forward, wide enough to drive a car through, its walls smooth and lined with recessed lighting. Every light flickered to life as she stepped in, one by one, in a ripple of illumination that ran ahead into the dark. The floor was polished, concrete, immaculate, as if someone cleaned it yesterday. And then the tunnel turned sharply left, and the world changed. There they were, lined up in perfect symmetry. Supercars, dozens of them. Bugattis, Koenigsegg's, McLarens, Ferraris. Cars she'd only ever seen on screens or behind ropes at auctions she could never afford to attend. Their paint jobs looked untouched. Their tires still had that factory gloss. Some had license plates. Others had VINs taped over like they'd never been registered. She walked past a Lamborghini with pearlescent paint that shifted between blue and gold, past a Pagani Huayra with the keys still in the ignition, past a red LaFerrari so sleek it looked like it might growl if she touched it. And then she did. She ran her fingertips along the fender. No dust, no cobwebs. These weren't abandoned. They were preserved, intentionally. Like someone had sealed this place on purpose, like a collector sealing away the rarest stamps in the world. At the far end of the room, she saw something else, a glass office. Inside was a workbench. Papers, blueprints, and what looked like an old-style logbook. She walked toward it, her footsteps the only sound in a cathedral of carbon fiber and chrome. This wasn't a garage, it was a vault. And somewhere between the wrench in her back pocket and the heartbeat in her throat, Lacey realized this wasn't going to be about fixing anything. It was about unlocking something, and she had just found the first key. It didn't feel like a place people forgot. It felt like a place someone loved too much to let go of. Every car had been parked with surgical precision, equal gaps between them, all facing forward like soldiers in dress blues. But the strangest part? No alarm system, no cameras, no red blinking sensors, just silence. A billion-dollar room, resting peacefully beneath an old patch of gravel. Lacey had worked in hundreds of garages, seen every kind of collector hoarders who loved too sloppily, or obsessives who loved too violently. But this was reverence. This was worship. She walked slowly, tracing her fingers along each hood like reading Braille. There was dust, but only a thin layer, not the kind that settles over decades. It was as if someone had cleaned them just before sealing the bunker. The blue McLaren had a microfiber cloth still folded on the passenger seat. The yellow Porsche had a key tag that read, "Start twice." These weren't museum pieces, they were drivers, and whoever owned them, they intended to come back. She circled around to the middle row and paused at a sleek silver hypercar with no branding. The badge had been removed. She crouched to check the tires. New, never touched pavement. Beside the car, a single toolbox sat closed, but unlocked, inside. A full custom titanium tool set, each piece engraved with Voss. That name again. She stood up, heart thudding louder. She didn't know who R.C. Voss was yet, but they didn't just have money. They had obsession. Obsession, and something to hide. She kept moving, glancing at every tag, every plate, trying to make sense of the collection. Each car had a small laminated card placed beneath the windshield wipers. A few were simple. 2016, LaFerrari 56 miles. Others were more cryptic. Hasson 2 of 15, Geneva deal. Unregistered. One read, "Do not start. Fuel mix incomplete." Lacey scribbled notes in her journal as she walked. It didn't feel real. Her hands were shaking. Her knees felt hollow. This wasn't just a garage. It was a story with missing pages. At the far corner of the room was a small covered object. She pulled the tarp away, expecting another exotic car. But underneath was a stack of pallets. And on those pallets, crates, each labeled in faded black stencil, AVs, rotors, carbon fiber panels, unreleased RCV prototype. She stepped back. These weren't just production cars. Some of these had never seen the road. Then, she heard it. A low electronic hum from behind the office glass. She turned, heart clenching. The lights inside the office had turned on, automatically. A motion sensor maybe, or maybe something else. She moved quickly, her boots echoing like pistol shots in the silence, and stepped through the glass doorway. Inside was a workbench, a row of framed photographs, and a large leather-bound logbook sitting open as if someone had just stepped away. Written across the top of the exposed page in bold, careful penmanship was a single sentence. "Don't touch the red one." Lacey stared at it, then slowly turned her head toward the back corner of the garage, where a single red car sat like a flame waiting for air. The room felt warmer now. Not physically, but in the way a place feels when it knows you've read its secrets. The logbook wasn't a binder or a spreadsheet printout. It was hand-stitched leather, edges worn, spine cracked with age, the kind of thing someone clung to even when newer, faster systems existed. Lacey flipped through the first few pages with cautious fingers. No dates, no titles. Just car names, modifications, notes in precise black ink and initials. Always the same. R, C, V. Some pages were simple. 07 Bugatti Veyron. Replaced ECUW. Prototype chip. Throttle delay removed. Success. Others were riddled with crossed-out lines, furious rewrites, and underlined warnings. P. 1 hybrid module unreliable. Do not push past 170. Failure equals fire risk. And there, near the center of the book, spanning 2 full pages, was an entry, unlike the rest. Red car, custom frame, AVS, base shell, twin, electric conversion on V12 mount. Torque curve exceeds known limits. Experimental ceramic battery installed. Contains sealed data drive. Do not start without failsafe. Underlined twice. Then again. Then circled. A smaller note scribbled in the margin. Key left in ignition. No backup. She stepped back from the bench, pulse racing. This wasn't a simple collection. This was a lab, a test bed. Somewhere between a garage and a classified tech facility. And the red car? It wasn't a Ferrari. It was something else entirely, something hand-built and too powerful to risk. She looked around the office now with new eyes. The framed photos showed a man in his 50 seconds, lean, grinning, standing beside prototypes, concept models, sometimes in wind tunnels, sometimes on salt flats. In every photo, he wore the same old bomber jacket and aviator sunglasses. There was no plaque, but she recognized the silhouette from an article she'd read years ago in a car mag someone left in her waiting room. Reynard Cole Voss, billionaire engineer turned recluse, founder of Voss Automotive Systems. Disappeared 2008. She whispered it aloud, tasting the weight of it. Voss. R.C. Voss. The bunker, the tools, the cars, it all made sense now. This was his final project, and nobody knew it existed. Not the press, not the government, not even his family, from what little she remembered. After a test crash in Nevada that was never officially explained, the man vanished, presumed dead, assets scattered. But here, under a forgotten lot behind a racetrack, his empire had been entombed. Lacey walked back into the garage, this time slower. She passed the Bugatti, the Koenigsegg, the electric Lotus prototype, all breathtaking, all priceless. But her eyes were on the red one now, low and sharp like a predator mid-pounce. The hood had no logo. The taillights looked like they'd been grown, not built. And in the center console, glinting faintly under the overhead light, was the key. She stopped a few feet away, her whole body tense. The air felt thicker around it. Not dangerous, just charged. Like whatever Voss had been building, it had been unfinished, untested, maybe even cursed, but she couldn't help herself. She stepped forward and reached for the door handle, and as she touched it, The headlights blinked once. No engine startup, no alarms, just 2 flickers of white light, like it had recognized her. And just like that, the red car wasn't just a machine anymore. It was waiting. The door opened with a soft psh, like a vault, yielding to a recognized fingerprint. Lacey slid into the seat cautiously, boots scraping the polished concrete floor as the door eased shut behind her. The cabin wasn't like the others. No familiar badge, no clunky switches or aftermarket mods. Everything was seamless, matte black, curved like it had grown around the driver. It smelled faintly of leather and ozone, like the air after a lightning storm. The seat molded to her shape before she even reached for a lever. This wasn't just a car. It was calibrated, tuned to wait for someone. The key was still in the ignition. Old school. A real metal key, not a push-button start. It sat in the column like a relic from a different era. Its edges worn, the grooves too smooth to have never been turned. A single tag dangled from it. Run only if you understand. She didn't. Not fully. But her hand moved anyway, trembling slightly as it curled around the cold metal. Click. The moment it turned, the entire dash lit up. Not all at once, but like a machine waking up, piece by piece. First, the HUD projected a thin blue arc across the windshield. Then a deep mechanical hum rose from beneath her feet, steady, low frequency, like a turbine cycling in slow motion. The main display flickered to life. One message flashed in glowing letters across the dash. Asterisk, asterisk, drive mode. Unlocked. Legacy. Test. Dream asterisk asterisk. Lacey blinked, unsure if she was hallucinating. She reached toward the screen, but before her fingers touched it, the option, Legacy, was highlighted and locked in. The turbine hum deepened, and somewhere inside the vehicle, something shifted like gears that hadn't turned in 15 years just clicked into place. The lights in the garage dimmed. Every other car powered down. Their lights cut. Dashboards faded, as if the bunker knew the red car had been awakened and chose to make room for it. Lacey gripped the wheel, which felt warm now, alive even. Her instincts screamed again. This wasn't like starting an old engine. This was like flipping the breaker on a buried reactor. She kept her foot off the pedals. No sudden moves. Let it wake. Let it show her what it was. A soft whir rose from the rear. An electric compressor, maybe. Then a voice, feminine, clear, and emotionless, echoed from the speakers. "Welcome back, Mr. Voss." Lacey froze. The car thought she was him. It had facial recognition, or at least voice prompts. Either way, it didn't seem to care who sat behind the wheel now, only that someone had returned. She reached for the gear shift, but there wasn't one. Instead, the HUD adjusted again. The entire tunnel ahead of her brightened. The bunker lights glowed brighter, framing the path like a runway. And then one more line appeared on the dash. One attempt. Do not stop. She didn't press anything. Didn't floor the accelerator. But the red car rolled forward anyway, smooth and slow, as if guided by something deeper than gears or circuits. Lacey's hands tightened on the wheel, but her heart felt calm. Impossibly calm. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't the mechanic anymore. She was the driver of someone else's dream. By the time the red car glided to a stop at the far end of the tunnel, Lacey was no longer breathing like herself. Her pulse had slowed. Her limbs strangely relaxed, like the machine had synced with her, somehow coaxing her nervous system into silence. The headlights dimmed again, and the main display faded to black. No shutdown sequence. No fan whir. Just stillness. The engine, if you could even call it that, was silent. She stepped out slowly, boots echoing again in the cavernous space, and turned back to look at the red car. It sat there like it had exhaled. Not menacing, not mechanical, just satisfied. The only sound left was the faint buzz of fluorescent lighting overhead. She needed answers. Back inside the glass office, she sat down at the desk, slid the logbook aside, and turned to the drawer below. It was locked. Of course it was. But she'd brought her father's old lockpick set more out of habit than hope. 3 minutes later, it clicked open. Inside was a small velvet box, a stack of manila folders, and a sleek black envelope. The envelope was heavier than expected. She opened it and found a dossier. Not about the cars, but about him. Reynard Cole Voss, born 1964, MIT at 15, patent holder on the magnetic clutch system, founder of Voss Automotive Systems, acquired at $4.1 billion valuation, known for building machines that felt human, according to an old Forbes quote. In 2004, he unveiled the AVS prototype at Geneva. In 2007, he vanished. But the real shock was in the pages clipped to the back. Flight records, insurance claims, and a classified memo, redacted in places, stamped, "Unconfirmed deceased." The official story said Voss died in a test crash in the Nevada desert during a private trial of an unlicensed vehicle. No body recovered, no black box recovered, only wreckage and a scorched perimeter. Authorities chalked it up to experimental tech failure. The company was liquidated, his assets seized or buried in probate. But there was one note in the margin, written in pen beside the memo. He left the crash. Someone saw him, said he walked away burned but alive. No one believed them. Lacey leaned back in the chair, hands resting on her thighs, staring at the ceiling. What if this entire bunker was his second life? What if everything above ground, his death, the crash, the disappearance, was a cover for what he was building down here? The red car wasn't a prototype. It was a message, a monument, maybe even a curse. She stood and looked again at the photos on the wall. Voss standing beside his creations, sometimes with a hand resting on the hood, always with a quiet, knowing smile. There was love in those images. Not ego, not flash. Love for machines, for motion, for the things people never understood about mechanics, that it wasn't just parts, it was intimacy. And then she noticed something else in one of the photos. A date scribbled in the corner, June 14th, 2008. That was 3 days after the crash that supposedly killed him. She grabbed the manila folders, rifled through blueprints, and found a calendar hidden between the pages. Only 2 dates were circled. June 14th, and tomorrow's date, September 1st. Beside it, a note in that same steady handwriting. If this opens, she's ready. She looked back at the red car. So was she. Lacey didn't sleep that night. She didn't even try. She sat in her truck, outside the bunker entrance with the red car key on a lanyard around her neck, staring out through the cracked windshield as the sky shifted from indigo to charcoal. The weight of everything, the cars, the secrecy, the fact that she had just driven a machine that technically didn't exist, pressed down on her like a hydraulic jack. But what haunted her more than anything was that line. If this opens, she's ready. Ready for what? By sunrise, she was back in the garage, under lot 17. The other cars looked dull now. Beautiful, yes, but pale next to the red one. Like backup singers to a soloist, no one could follow. She crouched beside the red car, ran her hand along the passenger side door, and opened it slowly. The interior was just as pristine as the driver's side. Smooth carbon panels, no cup holders, no distractions, just focus. And then, she saw it tucked barely out of sight beneath the seat. A corner of aged paper, folded so cleanly it looked like origami. She reached under, fingers brushing velvet, and pulled it free. It was an envelope, hand addressed to the one who finds her. No name, no date. Just that simple inscription in handwriting that matched every note Voss had ever scrawled in the ledger. She hesitated for a long moment, then tore the flap open with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter. 1 page. No signature, no preamble. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. Or maybe I did, and I just chose to disappear. Maybe some dreams are meant to be chased in silence. This car, this machine, she is the last of me. Not the best I built, but the most honest. She's wired with everything I know, everything I feared, everything I loved. She's fast, yes, but more than that, she listens, she adapts, she remembers. She was never meant for the road. She was meant for the ones brave enough to touch something unfinished. There's a data drive buried in the firewall. It's encrypted with my last patent. It contains what I saw, what I built after the crash. If you want to unlock it, you'll need to understand what this car actually is. Not a vehicle, a message. My name will fade. My fortune already has. But if you choose to finish her, make her yours. Paint her, drive her, but don't race her. Racing is for men trying to outrun time. This car was built for something else, to remind us that time doesn't own us. Drive carefully. She's alive. In ways you'll come to understand. Lacey let the letter rest in her lap for a long time. The garage was so quiet, she could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She reread the final paragraph twice, then leaned forward and pressed her palm against the dashboard. Alive, she whispered, and in that instant, the HUD blinked awake again. No startup, no ignition, just one single message. Drive? Again? She didn't press anything, but she knew she would. It didn't take long. 3 days after Lacey found the letter, after the second drive, after she spent 17 straight hours under the red car's chassis tracing wires she didn't recognize, and circuits that didn't exist in any manual, her world changed again. But this time, it wasn't quiet. It came with headlights. It started with a black SUV parked across the street from her lot. Then another, the next day. By the end of the week, 3 different strangers had shown up pretending to ask about tires. None of them looked at the garage. All of them glanced toward the padlocked bunker entrance behind it. One left a card. No name. Just a number and a logo. A hollow triangle inside a circle. When she called, a voice answered on the first ring and simply said, "Is she operational?" Lacey hung up. The following morning, drones hovered overhead. And by sunset, the news vans arrived. Not because she had posted anything, not because she'd told anyone, but because someone had. Someone with eyes in a satellite or ears on an old wiretap. It didn't matter. The secret was out. And vultures could smell a $300 million feast from 1,000 miles away. The reporters were relentless, camped outside the gate, asking if the rumors were true, if she had uncovered the missing Voss fleet. One even tried to bribe the old man at the scrapyard next door. Another offered $50,000 for a single photograph of the red car. She said nothing, locked everything, turned off her phone. But the pressure built like steam in a sealed engine. On the 6th day, a man in a suit knocked on the garage door. Lacey opened it holding a wrench. Not because she planned to use it, because it gave her something to hold on to. He introduced himself with a smile too clean to trust and a watch too expensive for his boots. Said he was from an interested party with legal claims to the Voss estate. He handed her a folder. Inside, printed copies of Voss's last patent filings, legal documents bearing the name of a tech firm she'd never heard of, and a cease and desist letter claiming that the red vehicle unnamed, unidentified, unregistered, was now federal intellectual property. It was signed by a corporate lawyer from Nevada and stamped with a seal she couldn't make sense of. She didn't say a word, just looked at the man and closed the folder. "I'm not selling," she said flatly. "Oh, this isn't a sale," he replied, still smiling. "It's an extraction." That night, she moved the red car. She drove it herself, no headlights, no noise. It barely made a sound as it crept through the hidden tunnels that branched beneath the complex. She'd discovered them just hours before, while tracing a coolant line that disappeared behind a false wall. It led to a lift, one of Voss's secret exits. Not just a builder of cars, but a planner for vanishing. She parked the red car in a shed 3 miles outside town, locked the gate, covered it in a canvas tarp, and left without looking back. When she returned to her shop, the SUV was gone. But the card with the triangle logo was pinned to her front door now. This time, there were no words, just one line, handwritten in ink. "You're not the only one." She woke up. She could have sold them. Every single one. The LaFerrari, The prototype McLaren, the Pagani that didn't even have a VIN. Some collectors would have offered her millions before even asking if the engines ran. They'd wire the money sight unseen, just for the bragging rights. She had a warehouse full of pure capital. Her entire life had been lived on the edge of overdue rent and clearance rack oil filters. And now she stood in a tomb of roaring beauty, with titles and logbooks and keys in her hands. But she didn't sell, she restored. One by one, car by car, she brought them back. Not to showroom condition, but to motion. She changed fluids, repaired hoses, replaced brake lines. Some needed new tires. One needed an entirely new ECU, which she built herself with the notes Voss had left in a drive hidden behind a vent in the bunker's air system. Each restoration was like waking up a ghost. She started calling them names. Not models. Names. The yellow Porsche became Honey. The obsidian Koenigsegg she called Raven. The matte green Aston Martin? Ash. She wasn't reviving a collection. She was creating a choir. And the red car? She didn't touch it again. Not yet. It wasn't ready. Or maybe she wasn't. When word spread that she wasn't selling, the tone shifted. The suits came harder. Cease and desist letters turned into visits from government observers. One woman flashed a badge so quickly it might have been from a cereal box. But her tone was clear. You're harboring sensitive technology. You are now being watched. Still, Lacey didn't back down. Instead, she opened the doors. Not to investors. Not to media. To people. She invited the local tech school's mechanics program to visit. Let the kids walk through the vault. Let them smell the rubber and oil. Let them touch a future they never thought they'd be close to. One boy burst into tears touching the Pagani. Said his dad used to show him photos of it before he passed. She started giving tours. Quietly, carefully. For veterans, for engineers, for gearheads who had always loved cars not for the price tag, but for the purr. She didn't want to sell the fleet. She wanted to share it. Not like a museum, but like a living thing, a living story. The town changed, too. Lot 17 became sacred ground. People started calling her the Keeper, and at night, when everything went still and her ears were buzzing from the weight of everything she was holding back, she would sneak out to the old shed 3 miles away. She'd pull off the tarp, open the red car's door, sit behind the wheel, and listen to the hum. She hadn't driven it again, not fully, but sometimes it would light up on its own when she sat down. Show her new messages, new files, blueprints, letters, recordings. Once, it whispered something through the speaker. You see her now, don't you? Lacey didn't know if it meant the car or herself. All she knew was this. When someone asked her what she'd done with the $300 million treasure she found beneath the earth, she didn't say, I kept it. She said, I freed it. She never meant to become a symbol. Lacey just wanted to fix things. She was a mechanic, a girl in